achieved air superiority, taking out all of Iran's Russian and Chinese air defense systems.
This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran.
CENTCOM says it sank 11 of Iran's Navy vessels, part of its goal to destroy Iran's Navy. It may take weeks to eliminate Iran's missile stockpiles and mobile missile launchers. But in eliminating key parts of the regime, the mission is ahead of schedule, according to President Trump.
We also projected 4 weeks to terminate the military leadership, and as you know, that was done in about an hour, so we're ahead of schedule there by a lot.
3 U.S. F-15 fighter jets were shot down overnight in a friendly fire incident when Kuwaiti air defense systems mistakenly fired on them. 6 American pilots evacuated and are now safe.
This was our last best chance to strike what we're doing right now and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime. Our objectives are clear.
This is not Iraq. This is not endless. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb.
This work is just beginning and will continue.
Secretary Hegseth said this is not a regime change operation, which begs the question, what happens if the Iranians are left with the remnants of the past regime? He and the president both have not ruled out putting boots on the ground. General Kane said today more forces are on their way to the Middle East. In Washington, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
Governor Janet Mills spoke with reporters during an event in Orono today in which she described the Trump administration's military operation in Iran as unconstitutional. With a war powers resolution expected to go before Congress this week, Governor Mills is hoping to see Congress affirm its authority over the executive branch.
I came of age during Vietnam. My colleagues, my classmates, my friends didn't have a choice. They were drafted and called up to go to a war that many of them didn't believe in. I don't want to see another forever war without full consultation, authorization from the people's representatives, the people of Congress, the members of Congress. This is a dangerous and reckless unilateral action, and I fear for the results.
Meanwhile, Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Graham Plattner held what his campaign called an emergency anti-war protest in Brewer last night to speak out against the joint attack on Iran. He was joined by dozens of community members who collectively rejected the prospect of war with Iran. Plattner, who served in the United States Marine Corps and Army National Guard, described the conflict as an abuse of power by the Trump administration. He echoed Governor Mills' push for Maine's congressional delegation to support the war powers resolution.
We cannot continue to act in this fashion. We cannot continue to get young Americans killed just to serve the interests of someone in power. That is not the way that we should be acting as a nation, and we need to be figuring out how do we claw that power back from the executive branch and put it back into the hands of those who deserve it constitutionally, which is Congress.
Meanwhile, gas prices are up and they could keep climbing thanks to the ongoing strikes in Iran. According to Gas Buddy, the price per gallon of gas rose almost 2 cents last week to an average price of $2.90 a gallon. That's 3.5 cents a gallon higher than a month ago and 14.5 cents a gallon lower than a year ago. Gas Buddy's head of petroleum analysis, Patrick DeHaan, said, quote, looking ahead, markets will now begin reacting to this weekend's U.S.-Iran attacks, which have elevated geopolitical risk premiums, even in the absence of immediate supply disruption. Oil prices have firmed as traders assess the potential for further escalation, end quote. Well, in other news tonight, jury selection was slated to begin today in the manslaughter trial of Jason Hewitt in Knox County. Instead, Hewitt has now pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the death of 45-year-old Kyle McDougal in Cushing back in 2024. According to unsealed court documents, the fatal shooting was allegedly a response to the victim stealing money and tampering with the truck belonging to the person who pulled the trigger. 3 people were there at the time of the shooting. According to those documents, they are all facing charges. Police initially learned about the killing when a tip led them to a home on River Road in Cushing. They found 42-year-old Mark Gagne allegedly burning the remains of McDougal's body and other evidence in a barrel. Hewitt will be sentenced on March 10th. And a Bangor man has been arrested for allegedly threatening and assaulting someone following an incident at a local hotel. Bangor Police Sergeant Jeremy Brock says 32-year-old Daniel Chapman was arrested after police responded to a disturbance at a hotel on Godfrey Boulevard a little before 4 a.m. According to Brock, people working there called and reported someone threatening bodily harm. Brock says multiple officers responded and found the disturbance had moved inside a room. Brock says the officers could hear continued threats of physical harm as well as threats to use a gun. He says they made entry into the room when they heard what they believed to be an assault taking place. Chapman is charged with criminal threatening with a dangerous weapon, assault, and violation of conditions of release. The man arrested in connection with vandalism at the Burnt Cove Market in Stonington over the weekend was in court this afternoon. 41-year-old Mark Vallejos is charged with criminal mischief and possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. The Hancock County Sheriff's Office says deputies responded to the Burnt Cove Market in the early morning hours of March 1st after it was reported to have been vandalized and thousands of dollars in damage done. They say during the incident, Vallejos allegedly damaged the storefront and multiple vehicles that were parked at the store before allegedly brandishing a firearm and fleeing the scene. In court today, bail for Vallejos was set at $1,500 cash. He is scheduled to be back in court in April. Well, Maine Secretary of State Shanna Bellows unveiled what she calls a new deal for Maine. Speaking on Monday from the Maine People's Alliance in Portland, Bellows laid out the 4 factors she wants to focus on. The first is utility costs, which includes capping the rate of returns for companies at 6%. The second is housing. She wants to get more people into homes and boost support for first-time homebuyers. Well, multiple development projects in the works in Waterville will add hundreds of affordable housing units. According to a report from centralmaine.com, projects underway will yield 350 new units, but many more are still needed. First, the King Street project is a $16 million plan developed by the Kennebec Valley Community Action Program. The article says that the project is 40% complete. The Lockwood Mill project will convert the former Lockwood Mill on Water Street into apartments. That project will yield 65 units total, and some are already move-in ready. The article goes on to say that other projects include SDG Estates, Head of Falls Village, Manor Gardens, and the Washington Street complex, which will contribute a combined 156 units. Alrighty, folks, we will pause now and peek outside for a first check of our forecast.
Thank you, Beth. Our first weather tonight is brought to you by Old Town Redemption Center, now offering a 10% bonus on your returnables and a monthly $100 drawing. All right, out there for today, we did see some sunshine, but highs were below average, low 20s here in Bangor, low to mid 20s along your coastline, with a few areas reaching close to upper 20s. You saw Freiburg at 27 down into the southwestern portion of the state, but much cooler for today further north, mid to upper teens. You saw 19 in Millinocket, 16 for Holton, and 17 in Presque Isle out there this afternoon. And for tonight, a lot of us really cooling off with clear skies in the area and lighter winds, but as we head into tomorrow, more increasing clouds ahead of the chance for some more snow as we head into tomorrow night, but it is going to be warm heading into your Wednesday, so a lot of that snow may melt away. So out there for tonight, clear skies, calm winds. You know what that means? Radiational cooling. That's going to drop our lows down into the low single digits. Beth?
Chase, thank you. Well, still to come on Fox 22 News at 10, our Alex Schley was in Augusta to highlight local business owners who are speaking out against a proposed bill. And after lot rents nearly doubled in Waterville, new legislation could help cap increases. We'll have those stories and more local news after these messages.
Find your perfect getaway game plan at Quirk Hyundai in Bangor. Kona handles with precision on the road. Lease for only $296 per month. Or go for the shutout on interest with 0% financing on Tucson. It's your Hyundai. Find it at Quirk.
A sharp pain in his chest. He knew it was his heart, but 2 hours from the big city hospital could tragically mean the end. But it wasn't. Thanks to Senator Susan Collins' tireless fight for Maine's rural hospitals. Because of Senator Collins' work, his local hospital had recently received up-to-date diagnostic equipment and upgraded facilities, all paid for with new federal funding. Lives are being saved. Call and thank our Senator Susan Collins for delivering this lifeline for Maine.
Craving something delicious? Welcome to High Street Market, located at 167 Enfield Road in Lincoln. Breakfast options? Grab a cup of coffee and try one of our sandwiches or burritos. When breakfast is over, we're just getting started. Pizza, subs, burgers, and pastries. Come get lost in Danny's Beer Cave. Order online and save 10% off your first order. High Street Market, where your taste buds go to party.
Our names were whispered through time, from generation to generation.
Don't you feel that there are things that cannot be explained?
God has a destiny for us. Surely nothing is impossible for God.
Score big during Truck Month at Quirk Ram. Ram Bighorn is a winter powerhouse, leased for $439 a month. Or get elite performance with Jeep Grand Cherokee, leased for $379 a month. It's your Ram, it's your Jeep. Find it at Quirk in Bangor and Belfast.
Welcome back. The Portland Sea Dogs mascot was among those who gathered at the State House in Augusta today, standing alongside Maine business owners in opposition to a bill they say could limit how they reach customers online. As our Alex Schley tells us, business owners argue the bill, as currently written, would put Maine companies at a disadvantage compared to businesses in other states.
Maine small business owners are speaking out against a state Senate bill aimed at limiting access to people's online data.
Sea Dogs are very concerned about the data privacy bill as it is written. Targeted digital marketing and social media have become a vital part of our efforts to ensure that we continue to reach the key audience members.
The bill, titled An Act to Enact the Maine Online Data Privacy Act, includes data minimization requirements that would restrict how small businesses use targeted digital marketing in Maine. Owners say the current language would drastically affect their bottom line.
Losing out on the ability to target our ideal customers will put our future plans of growth and job creation into question, while also costing us much more money to reach the same audience we are effectively reaching already.
Speakers emphasize they support data privacy protections, but say the details of this bill matter.
I think we can all agree that data privacy is not only the right thing that we should be doing, it's really a dereliction that we have not had a data privacy law. Ultimately, we should be using the model that allows a consent-based data privacy, that you agree that information can be sold to a third party. That's the model that is working in these other states and in the states in the New England.
Opponents argue the proposal as written could put Maine businesses at a competitive disadvantage and even drive some out of state. The state Senate is expected to vote on the bill later this week. In Augusta, Alex Schley for ABC 7 and Fox 22 News.
Rising prices on mobile home land are impacting residents across the country. State representatives say Maine mobile homeowners are no exception. Last year, we brought you a story describing how a New York-based investment firm took over several mobile home parks in Waterville, and then residents reported their lot rents had nearly doubled. However, elected officials have since stepped in, passing legislation which leaders say communities like Waterville are now using to help protect their citizens from what they call predatory behavior.
A model ordinance that allows the city to put a rent cap on the lots in the parks. And that is something any town or city council, select board can opt to do.
Leaders say Waterville is not alone. Communities like Jay are looking at both Waterville's ordinance and state law to pass one that best fits their own community. Well, Governor Janet Mills joined residents, housing advocates, and state and local leaders today to celebrate the preservation and rehabilitation of 24 affordable housing units in Orono through the state's Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program. This as advocates are pushing for lawmakers to approve an extension of that program. Our Grace Blanchard has more.
As decades-old federal rural housing loans are paid off, state officials warn that Maine is at risk of losing hundreds of affordable housing units to privatization.
And the possibility of unaffordable rent increases was very frightening to all of us.
That was almost the case for a 24-unit affordable housing complex in Orono after the longtime owner decided to sell in 2023, leaving residents on edge about its uncertain future.
The waiting list to get into affordable housing programs in other parts of, either Penobscot County or Maine, there's a waiting list that's pretty long. So I think we were kind of, all very nervous about, where are we all going to go?
To residents' relief, the Housing Authority of the City of Old Town assumed ownership of Mainview Apartments in late 2024.
He could have sold it to anybody, and the rents could have gone up tremendously, but we were able to preserve the housing, preserve it, and do a lot of improvements, and the residents only pay 30% of their income.
They were then able to make safety and accessibility improvements to the facility through the state's Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program, which the governor signed into law in 2020.
It would have been tragic for them to have lost this housing, lost their homes to development.
The governor has proposed a $70 million investment in housing to address affordability and increase supply. Legislation to extend the affordable housing tax credit is also pending, as housing advocates emphasize that preserving existing affordable housing is as important as building new homes.
There is a real threat to sort of displacement of people if we don't successfully bring together the resources and find the partners who are willing to do this work with us.
In Orono, Grace Blanchard, ABC 7 and Fox 22 News.
Coming up on the 10 p.m. news on Fox 22, the Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. used Anthropic's Claude in the Iran strikes hours after the Pentagon flagged it as a risk. And the FBI is saying the shooting in Austin is being investigated as a potential act of terrorism. We'll have those stories and more as the 10 p.m. news on Fox 22 continues.
Paramount Paving, Maine's go-to for all your paving and seal coating. Paramount Paving offers commercial and residential paving and seal coating services throughout eastern and central Maine. Give us a call for a free estimate today. Paramount Paving. When it comes to paving, we are Paramount.
Did you hear about SHIELD, that test for colon cancer?
No, what?
It's just a blood test.
No.
Exactly.
So I don't have to spend time doing all that other stuff?
Nope.
No
Bring it back. No
SHIELD is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved SHIELD from the company trusted in blood tests for cancer for over a decade.
Ready to create your backyard oasis? Alexander's Professional Landscaping will work with you to create your perfect outdoor space. Work one-on-one with our landscape designer to create a unique garden to fit your family's personal aesthetics and lifestyle. Have our pros install your new lawn, garden, or patio. Schedule a consultation today by calling 573-4497. Alexander's Professional Landscaping, the way landscaping should be.
Dorsey Furniture has just purchased the entire Bedding Industries of America 2025 showroom. That's one of America's oldest and largest premium mattress manufacturers. They manufacture famous Eastman House and Eclipse mattresses, as well as over 20 other trusted brands. From that buyout, we've received 40 mattresses, mostly queen size. And right now, everyone is 50% off. Limited quantity, no reorders. When they're gone, they're gone. Dorsey Furniture, family owned, Maine trusted.
Sleep well, my friends.
Paramount Paving, Maine's go-to for all your paving and seal coating. Paramount Paving offers commercial and residential paving and seal coating services throughout eastern and central Maine. Give us a call for a free estimate today. Paramount Paving. When it comes to paving, we are Paramount.
You are watching WFVX, Fox 22, Bangor.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed congressional leaders today. He will talk with the entire House on Tuesday. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are still in the region. Many airline passengers have been stranded or faced delays. The State Department has issued a worldwide caution alert. Fox's Jillian Turner has the latest from the State Department.
They're attacking our embassies directly. They're attacking facilities that have nothing to do with war or with military.
Tonight, American embassies in the Mideast remain under shelter-in-place or evacuation orders. The State Department worldwide caution alert remains in place. Quote, Americans worldwide, and especially in the Middle East, should follow the guidance in the latest security alerts issued by the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate.
We're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon.
That mission comes with a cost.
American diplomatic outposts around the world are becoming targets for anti-American protests and violence. Smoke billowing above the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait today after Iranian militias launched attacks targeting the area. A State Department official says no embassy staff members were injured. In Baghdad, hundreds of Iraqis attempted to storm the fortified Green Zone, home to the U.S. Embassy compound. And in South Asia, 22 people were killed during violent protests at the American Embassy in Karachi, Pakistan over the weekend, where people held signs saying, "Death to America." In Europe, more than 1,000 people in Athens, Greece took to the streets outside the U.S. Embassy there, Greek demonstrators holding signs reading, "Hands off Iran." Secretary of State Marco Rubio has launched a 24/7 emergency task force to communicate with Americans stranded in harm's way, urging them to make contact. Enroll at step.state.gov to get security alerts and join the WhatsApp channel called U.S. Department of State Security Updates for U.S. citizens. Tonight, a State Department official tells us they have already had 5 million engagements through the State Department's emergency communications channel since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. As of now, no State Department evacuations are planned, though that could change by the hour. At the State Department, Jillian Turner, Fox News.
Well, as the conflict in the Middle East intensifies, a new report says American forces may have relied on an AI tool to conduct precision strikes on Iran. It comes despite Pentagon concerns the tech was a, quote, supply chain risk. Fox's Darren Botello has more.
2 days after launching Operation Epic Fury, the Pentagon says more than 1,000 targets were hit in just the first 24 hours.
This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare.
The Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. military used Anthropic's Claude AI tool during the operation to conduct intelligence assessments, identify targets, and simulate battlefield scenarios, though that has not been confirmed by defense officials. Hours before the strikes, President Trump ordered federal agencies to phase out work with Anthropic after the company refused to hand over its technology over concerns it could be used for mass surveillance or autonomous weapons. In a social media post, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth accused Anthropic of, quote, arrogance and betrayal and demanded the freedom to use the AI tool for all lawful military purposes. Though lawmakers in Washington say the Trump administration must seek guidance from Congress as to how AI can be used.
This is something that they're going to have to deal with and come to Congress before. This is going to have to be something that is going to have to be dealt with in more detail.
As the Pentagon begins its exit from Anthropic, rival OpenAI is filling the gap. CEO Sam Altman announced the company has secured a deal to supply its tech to the Pentagon's classified networks. OpenAI says its contract includes language that its tech cannot be used for mass domestic surveillance or to power autonomous weapons. In Washington, Darren Botello, Fox Business.
2 people are dead and 14 are wounded after a shooting in Austin, Texas. Authorities haven't provided a clear motive for the attack, but there's evidence on the subject and in his possessions that indicate potential ties to terrorism. Fox's Brooke Taylor is in Dallas with those details.
Video shows the chaos outside an Austin, Texas bar early Sunday. Police say Anjaga Junya started shooting out the window of his SUV before getting out and targeting people on the street. It took officers just under a minute to take down and kill the gunman. The FBI is now investigating the shooting as a possible terrorist act.
In terms of specifically what type of terrorism, we're just at this point prepared to say that it was potentially an act of terrorism.
The incident happened after the U.S. announced it carried out coordinated attacks on Iran. Sources say the shooter was wearing a hoodie with "Property of Allah" written across the front and a shirt with the Iranian flag underneath. Officials searched this residence linked to the suspect and say they found an Iranian flag and photos of regime leaders.
There's no doubt that law enforcement and intelligence agencies are operating at an elevated threat level here in the United States.
Politicians on both sides of the aisle are worried about attacks on U.S. soil.
I think we should be concerned about both the lone wolf attack, whether this is either a lone wolf attack or it's a sleeper cell.
Given that this regime has its back to the wall, they're going to use every tool they have. I'm concerned that they will activate sleeper cells in the United States, that they will carry out cyber attacks.
And Texas Governor Greg Abbott says that they are going to respond aggressively to anyone who tries to use the current conflict in the Middle East to threaten the Lone Star State. In Dallas, Brooke Taylor, Fox News.
After a long career of fighting for civil rights, the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. returns to his home state of South Carolina. It's where hundreds lined up to pay their respects as he laid in repose at the state capitol. Fox's Madison Scarpino has the story.
Reverend Jesse Jackson lying in repose Monday in his home state of South Carolina. It's one of the several memorials for the civil rights icon since his February 17th death. The prodigy of Martin Luther King Jr. and two-time presidential candidate lying in the South Carolina state capitol after battling a rare neurological disorder. Dozens of people packed under the rotunda to honor his life.
That by tearing down the walls of segregation, Reverend Jackson and other courageous leaders also blazed a new path of freedom for the people of South Carolina.
The mayor of his home city of Greenville was one of the several leaders to speak about the Reverend and his life accomplishments. His daughter also speaking to the crowd.
We gather today under the dignity of this majestic dome to honor the work of Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, who in death is undiminished. He is undefeated. He is a force of nature, and I say is because he always will be.
Jackson's daughter says it's a high and unusual honor to allow remains to rest in the state capitol, and she thanked the South Carolina governor for that.
That what the governor has done in granting this honor has not only added greater solemnity to the memory of Reverend Jesse Jackson, but it has also reinvigorated the hope that maybe, just maybe, integrity is not dead in the United States of America.
And Jackson's children are vowing to continue their father's decades of advocacy. In Columbia, South Carolina, Madison Scarpino, Fox News.
Still to come on Fox 22 News at 10 hour, Jody Hersey was in Carmel to highlight a game that has brought a community together for ages. And in sports, state champions are crowned over the weekend. And up in Howland, the Penobscot Valley girls climbed another mountain. We'll be right back.
So what's it like being a doctor in Port Wynn?
This town is ridiculous.
Come on, you're starting to like it here.
Best Medicine, all new Tuesdays on Fox.
At Old Town Redemption Center, we are always ready to help with any fundraisers or bottle drives. We are here to help our community. Like and follow us on Facebook for upcoming weekly holiday giveaways and our monthly $100 drawing.
I got hurt by a big truck. Why did I call the twos? Because life-changing injuries deserve life-changing money. We got a client who broke multiple bones in a commercial vehicle accident, $700,000. Call the two. We win for you.
Brandywine Graphics makes it easy. We are the top source for screen printing, embroidery, branded merchandise, and direct-to-garment printing. With decades of experience, state-of-the-art equipment, and a commitment to excellence, why trust your apparel products with anyone else? And now, Brandywine Graphics can easily launch online stores for your school or organization. Simply design your products from brands like Eddie Bauer, Carhartt, and more. Share the link and we'll do the rest. Like we said, Brandywine Graphics makes it easy. Find out more at brandywinegraphics.com or at our Hamden location.
We're lucky to live in Maine. We have a wealth of natural resources, hardworking people, and time for the things that matter. Mechanical Services is all about Maine, with energy efficiency that protects our environment and helps businesses grow. Preventive maintenance and energy solutions that save money. How Maine is that? Mechanical Services. We're everywhere you are in Maine.
A sharp pain in his chest. He knew it was his heart, but 2 hours from the big city hospital could tragically mean the end. But it wasn't. Thanks to Senator Susan Collins' tireless fight for Maine's rural hospitals. Because of Senator Collins' work, his local hospital had recently received up-to-date diagnostic equipment and upgraded facilities, all paid for with new federal funding. Lives are being saved. Call and thank our Senator Susan Collins for delivering this lifeline for Maine.
I was in a car accident. 8 years of memory gone.
Fox's critically acclaimed hit Doc is back. And you can watch it anytime.
I need to be the doctor that I was.
Doc, all new Tuesdays on Fox and watch anytime on Hulu.
At Old Town Redemption Center, we are always ready to help with any fundraisers or bottle drives. We are here to help our community. Like and follow us on Facebook for upcoming weekly holiday giveaways and our monthly $100 drawing.
The battle on Capitol Hill over funding for Homeland Security is turning into more of a Cold War, with Democrats remaining tight-lipped about a new proposal from the White House. Fox's Mark Meredith has more from Washington.
We need to make sure we're defending the homeland by also funding what's happening here at home.
Often referred to as America's first line of defense against terrorism, the Department of Homeland Security remains unfunded as the Iran conflict escalates. On Friday, agency employees missed their first paycheck of a prolonged shutdown, with more to come this week if an agreement is not reached. Congressional Republicans now hoping the heightened threat from Iran will ramp up pressure on Democrats.
Who are Democrats siding with? Right? They are siding with our enemies. They are making us less safe. They are defunding Homeland Security, standing in the way of the president.
Democratic leadership say they've received a new counteroffer from the White House, which they are reviewing. But deep divisions remain, with immigration enforcement restrictions a key sticking point.
We believe immigration enforcement should be fair and just and humane. And until that changes, the DHS funding bill is not going to move forward.
Despite a lack of funding, DHS is beefing up security and warning of potential lone wolf and cyber attacks related to the ongoing conflict in Iran. Some experts now warning the department should also raise the threat level under the National Terrorism Advisory System.
See something, say something. You want the American people involved in their own security. When they're involved in their own safety and security, they're going to work closely with law enforcement.
And while negotiations are ongoing, the House is expected to vote on a new DHS funding bill at some point this week. In Washington, Mark Meredith, Fox News.
A major legal showdown is brewing between Live Nation and the Justice Department. The government claims the concert giant illegally monopolized booking and ticketing, driving up prices for fans. Fox's Lydia Hu has more from outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
Jury selection now underway in one of the biggest antitrust showdowns, the United States versus Live Nation and Ticketmaster. The federal government is joined with dozens of states and accusing Live Nation of illegally dominating the live music business after the Obama administration allowed Live Nation to merge with Ticketmaster more than 15 years ago. Prosecutors argue that Live Nation's massive ownership or management of concert venues allows the company to pressure venues to use Ticketmaster, ultimately limiting competition and driving ticketing fees higher for fans. Now, Live Nation strongly disputes these accusations. It says venues choose its ticketing services because it's the best and most efficient option. They also highlight in its annual report what they call significant and increasing competition in the ticketing space. You can see some of those competitors listed right here. Still, some antitrust experts say the government has got a strong case here.
I do think that the Live Nation is facing an uphill battle. Ticketmaster controls something between 80 to 86% of the ticket sales in large venues. That's also unchallenged. So you have significant power.
Now, we could see some big superstars taking the stand to testify. Kid Rock and Ben Lovett of Mumford & Sons are named as witnesses for the government. On the other side, we have a lot of executives from sports teams. You can see executives from the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Cavaliers set to testify for Live Nation. This trial is expected to last 4 to 6 weeks, and if the jury decides that Live Nation violated antitrust laws, potential penalties could range from fines to restrictions on their contracts to even, in the most extreme circumstance, possibly a spinoff of Ticketmaster from Live Nation. Reporting from Lower Manhattan, Lydia Hu for Fox Business.
Drug maker Novo Nordisk is upgrading a manufacturing facility to make a pill form of its popular weight loss drug Wegovy. Fox Business Network's Grady Trimble has a look at that story and more in tonight's Fox Means Business.
Markets finished mixed for your Monday. The Dow closing in the red while the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq both finished in the green. Rio Tinto Group has approved a $473 million mine expansion at its Richards Bay Minerals unit in South Africa. The company says the project will extend the life of the mine to 2050 and will, quote, ensure RBM's operational continuity for years to come. Work was halted at the end of 2019 over violent community protests. Novo Nordisk will spend $507 million in upgrading a factory in Ireland to produce its Wegovy weight loss pill. The facility, which employs 260 workers, will provide, quote, significant additional capacity for current and future obesity and diabetes medicines. The investment will also include an upgrade and retrofit of the existing facility, plus create up to 600 construction jobs. And Apple announced it'll launch a lower-priced version of the iPhone 17. The new iPhone 17e will start at $599 and features the same processor but a slightly smaller screen. The model also has one camera instead of two and will launch on March 11th. That's business. I'm Grady Trimble.
And just ahead, we have your full 5-day forecast. Keep it right here.
Even though temperatures are warming up this week, we got some more snow on the way. Not so much tonight, but for tomorrow night. But the main thing is that snow that falls going to stick around with warmer temperatures back in the forecast? We'll have those answers coming right up.
Blazing Trails, located in Lincoln, is your #1 trusted caregiver storefront. From personalized consultations to the highest quality product, Blazing Trails provides outstanding patient services to Eastern and Central Maine. Discover how we're blazing the trails to quality holistic medicine.
I got hurt in a car accident. Why should I call the twos?
Because when you're hurt, you need money. And I don't take tiny checks. I get my clients big checks. I got a client who injured their wrist, a big check for $185,000. Another client broke their collarbone, and I also got them a big check for $400,000.
Don't take a tiny check for your car wreck. Call the twos.
Hurt in a car accident? I'm your go-to guy.
Are you experiencing foot pain? Comfort Shoes and More has a team of experts trained in pet orthotics to help you find relief. They offer tailored fittings, shoe modifications, customized orthotics, and much more for the ordinary or for the hard-to-fit foot, with fashionable and functional footwear from today's top brands: Hoka, Brooks, Keen, Teva, Taos, Ufus, and Birkenstocks. From running to walking, casual or dress, they have it all. Take the drive to Newport for a sit and fit to find your perfect fit. You and your feet will be glad you did.
You heard it was a hit. You heard it was a smash. A wonder. A phenomenon. An international sensation. But you haven't heard them.
March 16 at the Cross Insurance Center. Get your tickets today.
Blazing Trails, located in Lincoln, is your #1 trusted caregiver storefront. From personalized consultations to the highest quality product, Blazing Trails provides outstanding patient services to Eastern and Central Maine. Discover how we're blazing the trails to quality holistic medicine.
Only one show has this much star power.
We're going to start off with the bang!
The Masked Singer, all new Wednesdays on Fox.
Thank you very much. Tonight's weather is brought to you by Blazing Trails, located in Lincoln. Blazing Trails provides outstanding products and customer service to Penobscot County. Blazing Trails, they're blazing the trails to holistic medicine. All right, as we see out there for highs today, we saw well below average, low to mid-20s here in the Bangor and coastal regions, even though we had plenty of sunshine out there for today, and even cooler as you head further north. 15 for you in Greenville, the cool kids in town, with upper teens in Millinocket, and the mixture of mid to upper teens all the way up into Holton and Presque Isle for today. While for tonight, a lot of us are really cooling off. We'll see single digits in the area. Our forecast low could get close to 2 degrees with those clear skies and light winds out there for tonight. And you could definitely see some areas possibly drop a few degrees below zero as you head further north, but better chances for teens along our coastline for tonight. But as we head into tomorrow, a nice warm up, mid-30s here in the Bangor and coastal region. As you see further further north, that'll even stretch up to there as well. Some areas are a bit cooler, but still expecting low to mid 30s all the way up in the Clayton Lake and Caribou. So average highs this time of year, right around 36 degrees. That's exactly what we're looking to reach for tomorrow. As we head into your Wednesday, we'll continue to bump up those temperatures. Even though we're looking at chances for snow Tuesday night, we'll be in the mid 40s then. Now those temperatures fall into your Friday back near freezing, but we ramp everything back up into this weekend, low to mid 40s for Saturday and Sunday, and starting off the work week on Monday with those highs near 50 degrees. So wind out there, a little breezy at times for today, but it is going to lighten up throughout tonight, but pick up again tomorrow ahead of the low pressure system on the way. We can see some gusts near 25 miles per hour here in Bangor, close to 30 miles per hour near the Machias area, with winds lighter as we head off to the northwest. And a lot of that wind will lighten up tomorrow night, and that's going to allow for some big flakes to fall across the Bangor and coastal regions as we have some snow on the way. But tonight, no snow just yet. Clear skies out there. That's really going to help our temperatures fall down near zero. But then we got the increasing clouds for tomorrow. Still seeing some sunshine during the afternoon hours. That's going to help us warm above freezing, but then falling back below. And we got that chance for snow tomorrow night. Falling will be the heaviest, falling right around 9 to 10 o'clock for tomorrow. But it will be out of here before we get into the early morning hours for your Wednesday. And then again, lots of sunshine for your Wednesday. A few clouds further north, but those highs will be reaching the mid 40s. That's going to melt a lot of that snow that we just will received a few hours before, right? So for snowfall amounts, many of us are in that 2 to 4 inch range here in the Bangor region. Could see some locally higher amounts along your coastline and down near Portland for tomorrow. But as you head further north towards Millinocket, you will see less, right around that 1 to 2 inch range. But again, once we get into your Wednesday, a lot of those temperatures looking to reach into the mid 40s. That can melt around 2 to 4 inches of snow that we had just received. So keep that in mind. But for tonight, lows near the low single digits, clear skies. We have a few increasing clouds late. Otherwise, winds will be calm for tonight, but they will pick up again tomorrow. A little breezy at times, gusting near 25 miles per hour. That's going to help those highs reach above freezing, and partly cloudy for tomorrow, but more increasing clouds as we head later throughout the day. So here's your extended forecast. And one thing it does not show is that chance for snow tomorrow night, but it will be out of here by your Wednesday and could melt all of that away with highs in the mid 40s, upper 30s for your Thursday, back near freezing for Friday with a slight chance for snow. Otherwise, we can see a slight chance for rain heading into your Saturday with those highs back in the low to mid 40s. Beth?
Chase, thank you so much. Folks, don't go anywhere. We have sports next.
Dreaming of a new garage or custom build? Patriot Landscaping and Construction delivers from frame to finish. Expert craftsmanship, durable designs, and quality you can trust. We get it done right. Call Patriot Landscaping and Construction today. Let's build your future together.
A sharp pain in his chest. He knew it was his heart, but 2 hours from the big city hospital could tragically mean the end. But it wasn't. Thanks to Senator Susan Collins' tireless fight for Maine's rural hospitals. Because of Senator Collins' work, his local hospital had recently received up-to-date diagnostic equipment and upgraded facilities, all paid for with new federal funding. Lives are being saved. Call and thank our Senator Susan Collins for delivering this lifeline for Maine.
People ask me all the time, does Lowry & Associates really get all of those clients, all of those big settlements? Yes, we do. And you know what else is true? I really am standing on top of this big truck.
Craving something delicious? Welcome to High Street Market, located at 167 Enfield Road in Lincoln. Breakfast options? Grab a cup of coffee and try one of our sandwiches or burritos. When breakfast is over, we're just getting started. Pizza, subs, burgers, and pastries. Come get lost in Danny's Beer Cave. Order online and save 10% off your first order. High Street Market, where your taste buds go to party.
The most intense season of Next Level Chef is here. Medic! And the competition is more chaotic than ever.
That's crazy.
All new Thursdays on Fox and watch anytime on Hulu.
Dreaming of a new garage or custom build? Patriot Landscaping and Construction delivers from frame to finish. Expert craftsmanship, durable designs, and quality you can trust. We get it done right. Call Patriot Landscaping and Construction today. Let's build your future together.
I'm Johnny Knoxville, and this is Fear Factor, House of Fear.
It's going to get so much worse.
Fear Factor, House of Fear, all new Wednesdays on Fox.
Welcome back in, folks. On Saturday, Nets were cut down and state champions
of the Maine high school basketball tournament were crowned after 3 weeks of action, which included the Penobscot Valley Howlers. The Howlers won their second straight title as they beat Mount Abram and Augusta on Saturday. Last year they ran the table in Class C, but this year they conquered Class D. PVHS came into the tournament as the 4 seed. They dropped 3 games to Bangor Christian and 2 to Class C champion Mattanock Academy in the regular season, but the Howlers bought into the underdog mentality and came out on top.
It's a lot different feeling because we knew that a lot less people believed in us this year, and honestly a lot of people probably wanted us to lose after last year, so
it feels really great. We knew coming into the season that it would be hard, losing some really good starters and players, but this team we have so much fun together.
For the Howlers, that underdog mentality was forged after their loss to Mattanock, and before the tournament started, there was a week-long gap filled with just practice. Head coach Nate Case says he challenged his team to give their coaches their best and hardest week of practice they've had all year long, and Case says that is what made the difference in the state final on Saturday.
When opportunity arises or comes, it's too late to prepare then. So we knew after we lost to MA, we have to start preparing for this moment then. So we were prepared to play 32 minutes, and our coaching staff pregame said, girls, this is the first time all year that we knew that no matter the opponent, we're ready for 32, right? And so and trusting that defense each time, we knew we were ready for 32 minutes of our brand of basketball, playing defense every time, sprinting back, and it came from that preparation.
Favorites 1 year, underdogs the Nets. Congrats to those senior state championships both times. Staying with basketball, the Maine Black Bears swept the America East Rookie of the Week honors this week. Ace Flagg won his second Rookie of the Week honor for his dominant weekend on the men's side. He shined against Albany on Thursday, pouring in 22 points on 8 for 9 shooting while adding 12 on Saturday. On the women's side, Lala Woods earned the weekly honor by averaging 14 points and over 3 assists per game as she helped the Black Bears lock up the 2 seed in the conference tournament with 2 big wins to close out their regular season. We'll let the madness begin. The March Madness, that is. Several area college basketball teams learning their tournament fate on Monday, including Farmington, St. Joe's, Bates, Bowdoin, and the Huskies. The USN women's team is going dancing, fresh off winning the Little East title over Rhode Island College. The Huskies will head to Brunswick Friday night to face Johnson and Wales in round 1. It was USM's first conference title since 2013, and now the Huskies are poised to continue what has really been a magical season with local standouts JC Christopher, Lucy Wiles, and Brianna Townsend on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, we're super excited. Obviously, when you get to just keep playing, when you get to the end of the season, especially as a senior, you start to see your days kind of, you know, you want to hold on a little bit more.
This is an unreal experience. Honestly, throughout the game yesterday, I was getting emotional. I was like one of the only ones that after the game I bursted out in tears just because it means everything to me.
Completely shifting gears here now and going to the pavement, there was NASCAR history made on Sunday. Tyler Reddick, driver of Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin's number 45 car, won his 3rd straight race on Sunday down at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas. Reddick had won the Daytona 500 and the Texas Grand Prix as well. Simply put, there have been 3 races to start the season, and Reddick has won all of them. That's never been done in NASCAR's 77-year history. Now, it's only fitting that if there were to be a three-peat in racing, it would be tied to Michael Jordan, right? Well, here's the co-owner and one of the greatest competitors of all time, Michael Jordan, after the win.
Well, I'm proud of the team that we put together. I mean, Denny, I'm pretty sure it's the same way. He feels the same way as I do. And I think a lot of credit goes to him because I think he's the mastermind behind finding Tyler and putting together, you know, Billy Scott and all that. Look, I just put up the money. I'm just a competitor. But I think Denny's done an unbelievable job in terms of helping build this team. And I think the team has done a good job in just taking our leadership and going out and winning. That's what it's about, winning.
Guy's just a winner. What can you say? That's all the time we have for sports. We'll be right back after the break.
We all have a friend who loves the McDonald's hot, crispy Filet-O-Fish.
My friend, you could be that friend.
Choose between 2 Filet-O-Fish and 2 10-piece McNuggets, or mix and match for $6.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Fires, floods, burst pipes. Disasters happen, but the mess they leave behind doesn't have to last. For 40 years, Bouchard Cleaning and Restoration has been there to help Mainers get back to the closest to normal as they can. When your property is at its worst, Bouchard Cleaning and Restoration is at their best, and they have been for 4 decades. Put your trust in the Bouchard team. Bouchard Cleaning and Restoration. You keep the memories, we'll handle the rest.
Poor insulation is the origin of your heating and cooling complications. We are Dr. Energy Saver by TC Hafford Basement Systems. We are the local energy saving experts. We identify the problem areas and provide customized solutions that leave your home comfortable and your energy bills affordable. Whether it's a drafty attic or poorly sealed ductwork, we have your back and more. Financing is available. For a no-cost, no-obligation estimate, call Dr. Energy Saver by TC Hafford Basement Systems. We fix uncomfortable homes.
A sharp pain in his chest. He knew it was his heart, but 2 hours from the big city hospital could tragically mean the end. But it wasn't. Thanks to Senator Susan Collins' tireless fight for Maine's rural hospitals. Because of Senator Collins' work, his local hospital had recently received up-to-date diagnostic equipment and upgraded facilities, all paid for with new federal funding. Lives are being saved. Call and thank our Senator Susan Collins for delivering this lifeline for Maine.
Your call is important to us.
You've heard this before, too many times. Tired of being customer 45978? Yeah, we would be too. Speed means fast uploads, no lag, and zero buffering. But it also means calling you back, showing up on time, and treating you like a person, not a problem. So whether you're working, streaming, gaming, or all three, it is time to make the switch to a provider that actually tries. Go NetSpeed. Service isn't dead. It just moved local.
With McValue at McDonald's. Get deals to keep the party going.
It only takes $5 to fire up the flavor with the hot and spicy McChicken. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Tuesdays, Fox's critically acclaimed hit Doc is all new.
I need to be the doctor that I was.
Doc, all new, Tuesdays on Fox.
An animated blockbuster sequel, a Golden Globe-winning drama, and a Grammy-winning pop star are among this week's new digital DVD and music releases available to add to your home library. Fox's Ashley Dvorkin runs down the list of what's new in home entertainment.
Be on the same page every day.
The blockbuster hit Zootopia 2 tops this week's list of new home releases. Rookie cops Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde go undercover after Gary the Snake turns the animal metropolis upside down.
Hunt!
Glenn Powell stars in the sci-fi thriller The Running Man, playing a desperate man who enters a televised survival game where contestants are hunted for sport.
Is it true?
Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal lead Hamnet, a historical drama about the loss of Shakespeare's son and the grief which may have inspired Hamlet.
Ella McKay.
Emma Mackey navigates family turmoil and political ambition in the drama Ella McKay, with co-stars including Jamie Lee Curtis.
Merrily we roll along.
Merrily We Roll Along is a filmed version of the Tony-winning Broadway revival of the Stephen Sondheim musical, charting the turbulent relationships of 3 friends over 3 decades.
Good boy.
Aaron Eckhart is an LAPD officer who teams up with a canine partner to hunt down a violent gang in the crime thriller Muzzle City of Wolves.
You're like my best friend.
The drama thriller Lurker follows a retail clerk who infiltrates a rising music star's inner circle where obsession turns deadly. From the small screen, Season 6 of Cobra Kai reignites rivalries. Season 2 of For All Mankind escalates the space race. And Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds launches new missions for Captain Pike and the Enterprise. In music, British pop star Harry Styles returns with his 4th album, Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally. And Charlie Puth drops his 4th record, Whatever's Clever. In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
Well, bingo is an old-fashioned game that's still a modern-day attraction to competitors of all ages. Our Jody Hersey takes us to bingo night in Carmel, where the winning numbers are always changing.
22. What started out as a carnival game here in America is now a weekly pastime in many Maine communities.
Oh, I love bingo.
Sandra Storman is just one of the players that attend bingo night at the Carmel Snowmobile Club each week.
Yeah, you have to get here early and get your seat you want.
Carmel Snowmobile Club President Tricia Babcock says the game always draws a crowd.
It's a glue to our community. Like, a lot of people really enjoy it. It's kind of the older crowd, but the younger crowd's actually getting drawn into it.
The traditional game of bingo, where players aim to get 5 numbers in a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal line, is still a favorite that's played before each novelty game, where the players use their daubers to create winning shapes or patterns. Research shows playing bingo improves people's memory, cognitive function, and hand-eye coordination.
35, 17.
Dean Washburn has been calling the numbers for as long as he can remember.
Then it was 75 when we got the building out and what have you. Bingo's been going in it ever since the building was put up because it basically pays a lot of the bills.
Many of the participants say they have a lucky seat, a good luck charm, or a favorite colored dauber that gives them a winning edge. But for Mark Willie, the game of bingo is just all about the numbers.
There's no really rhyme or reason. You just got to have the numbers when they're called.
In Carmel, I'm Jody Hersey for ABC 7 and Fox 22 News.
Alrighty, folks, well, that is going to do it for us. From everyone here at Fox 22 News, take care and have a great rest of your night. We'll see you tomorrow.
For more local news coverage, switch over to our sister station, ABC 7, right now for ABC 7 News at 11.
How many times has something broke down, but the right size tool is nowhere to be found? What?
I'm in the bedroom.
Irvin Magic Johnson and Love Stories Sarah Pigeon on a new Jimmy Kimmel Live later tonight.
Can I go on a ride-along?
Patrol work can be unpredictable. Careful what you wish for, Dash.
Are you available for a wellness checkout at the old Westview Hospital?
I thought Westview shut down last year.
Is that a dead body?
You're selling radio out too?
Yeah.
What the hell was that? Look out!
Zombies.
Fall back! Where's Dash?
This is ABC 7 News at 11.
President Trump explained his rationale